A lot of people think that when they graduate high school or college, that they're done with group projects. Well, that's not really the case. In most jobs, you will be required to work with other people on projects. And so it's good to talk about and to continue to develop our group communication skills. So we're going to spend a few minutes with that today. First of all, we have small groups. These are defined as anywhere between 3 and 20 people. Some experts say up to 25. And 25 people doesn't sound like a small group anymore. But the reason they have up to 20 or 25 people is because communication can behave the same way with 3 people as it does with 20. Whenever it comes to turn taking and those kinds of conversational type meetings, small group communication works with up to about that many people. Anything larger than that, you start getting into more of a public speaking type situation. Another type of group that you should become very familiar with, and most of you probably are familiar with, is that of virtual groups, where your members are in different locations. It's not the same as interacting face-to-face, but unfortunately, it's becoming the new thing, the new norm for us. So these are things like video conferences, phone conferences, or even working asynchronously via email. Now more than ever, these are skills that are relevant and need to be developed, because you will need to know how to do this whenever you enter the workforce. It's becoming so common. Whenever you are part of a group, the first step that the group needs to do is set up an agenda, which is a plan for what's going on. This is going to need to be tasks and time frames. So tasks, you need to assign who is doing which task within the group and when it needs to be done. That's under time frames. Within a group, you're going to have people who fulfill different types of roles. So you have task roles. Task roles are specific jobs within the project. And you have interpersonal roles, which are relational in nature. So these are the folks that help manage the people within the group, managing tempers and egos, and facilitating group interaction. So they're the ones that are going to help the meeting continue whenever people get off on a sidetrack or they start arguing amongst themselves and those kinds of things. Interpersonal roles are an important part, especially of a larger group. Then you have dysfunctional roles. A dysfunctional role is anyone who interferes with the agenda. And that can be something as far as simple as failure to complete tasks on time. It can be it's folks that derail the meeting because they want to talk about yesterday's football game, or it's people who just want to joke around and not get any work done, or whatever. They want to follow their agenda as opposed to the group agenda. So within every group, you're going to have dysfunctional members or members that fulfill this dysfunctional role, and it needs to be managed. Sometimes that dysfunction is related to conflict, but there are different kinds of conflict. So when conflict arises, and it will, productive conflict can happen. Productive conflict is issue-based. It's focused on fixing problems within the group or within the project. It's seeking answers to questions. Productive conflict is oftentimes how we get things done and changed. Personal-based conflict is counterproductive. It's ego-based. This will oftentimes come from differing ideas or opinions. Too many people trying to be in charge all at once. An effective group needs what's called cohesiveness. Cohesiveness means that the group works well together. They kind of stick together. They can critically analyze ideas together. So I can suggest something, and then my group mate can look at what I suggested and see a problem and say, did you think about this? Did you think through this part of it? And they can point out whatever problem that they see. And I'm not going to get offended by that. I'm going to say, no, I didn't think of that. I'm glad you pointed it out. And we're going to fix that problem. A group that works well together can form a cohesion between its members that is very useful. Groupthink is a danger of working in a group, especially for extended periods of time. It's whenever you start forming friendships within your group that take priority over getting the work done. Groupthink does not allow for critical analysis of ideas. It's more personally based interaction than factually based or work-based. This is why I always suggest that you try to maintain a distance, a social distance, for lack of a better expression there. You maintain a distance between you and your coworkers or your group mates. Don't try to be close friends, be coworkers. Otherwise, you fall to groupthink over time. One method that people can use to avoid groupthink if you are part of a group for a lengthy period of time. Of course, like I said, avoid becoming close friends with the members of your group. But another thing that you can do is play the devil's advocate or engage in what's called dialectical inquiry. That's what the devil's advocate does. They argue alternatives, argue different ideas. They support opposing claims. They try to find any particular issues with a problem, or with a solution, rather, to a problem. So if I'm playing devil's advocate, I'm going to look to see if what my group mate suggested is going to work. And if I think there may be a problem, I'm going to ask about it. Or I'm going to argue against their idea to see if they come up with an answer. Now, don't cause problems just to cause problems. The aim is to strengthen the group interaction. So your point is not to become dysfunctional. You are fulfilling a function as the devil's advocate. And as long as your goals are aligned with the group agenda, you should be fine. But if you're causing problems just to cause problems, you need to shut that down. I will offer this one more bit of advice. Be careful about playing devil's advocate. No one likes the devil's advocate. So if you're the type of personality that needs members of the group to like you, be careful about trying to play devil's advocate. Within every group, you are going to have a leader. So now we move to a brief discussion about leadership style. There are several different considerations when it comes to leadership style, and here are 4 of them. 4 different approaches. You have an autocratic leader. Autocratic leaders make decisions and announce them to the group. I have decided this is what you are going to do, or we are going to do. They don't ask for opinions or ideas. They just make the decision themselves. Then you have consultative leaders. Consultative leaders make decisions after discussing ideas with the group. So they do ask for opinions. Those opinions may or may not influence the decision of the leader, but they have at least discussed things first. Third, we have participative leadership. This is also known as democratic leadership, where the leaders make decisions with the group. Everyone votes, and all votes count equally. And fourthly, you have delegative leadership. This is where the leader delegates responsibility of decision-making to members of the group. This is also known as laissez-faire leadership. Participative or democratic leadership is the most preferred method of leadership in our culture. We all like to have a say in what's happening next. So even though the leader has relinquished their decision-making power for this type of leadership, they still have other responsibilities as leader. They guide activities. They make sure that everyone has what they need as far as resources go, and that everyone stays on task and works together to achieve the desired outcome. So whenever you become a leader within a group, participative or otherwise, the first step is to set up that agenda. Let each member know what to do and when to do it. So tasks and time frames once again. And when you have members of the group who do not participate, who become dysfunctional in one way or another, your leadership responsibility there is to figure out what's going on. Know that it could be they don't ask questions or they don't participate in meetings because they have apprehension, fear of participation. So you need to figure out how to help them manage that. It may be a lack of self-esteem because they've never done this before. It may be status differences. If you're in a group where there are people from different ranks within a company or an organization, expect that there will be some element of status difference that manifests itself within your group. You need to figure out how to manage that. And then there's, of course, just the folks that show up unprepared to the meeting. They just didn't do what they were supposed to do. You have to deal with those individuals as well. When we make decisions as a group, or really anytime you make a decision, you go through this process. But as a group, it's a very slow process. So the step one to making a decision as a group, you identify the problem. What is it that we're here to do? You summarize the problem, assure the problem is understood, and gain agreement about how to proceed. Step two, conduct research and analysis of all pertinent information. If you, as the leader of the group, are the one doing all the research, let everybody know that that's what you're doing. Keep everyone up to date. Sometimes you will delegate this to other members of the group who are better at research. So that will be a decision that the group comes to together. Step three, establish guidelines and criteria for how you're going to get to a solution. How will we establish the solution? Once everyone has the information they need, how are we going to proceed? So you need to make that clear. Step four, generate those solutions. Whatever you agreed on in step three, you employ in step four. This may be as simple as conducting a brainstorming session when you're all together, throwing ideas out of how to solve the problem and move forward. Or it may be some other method that you have chosen. Whatever it is, get the ideas out there in the open, talk about them, and then step five is where you actually select the best solution. So you weigh out the pros and cons of the solutions that are suggested and determine which one is the best choice and choose it. Step six, you evaluate those solutions. So you go back and you look at everything on the decision-making process. Did it work the way it was supposed to? Did we follow procedure? Did this solution that we chose in step five do what it was supposed to do? One final note. When it comes to group work, sometimes you'll have to do a group presentation. So we're just going to hit on a couple of very key things here. One is to practice as a group. So a common downfall for group presentations is that the group does not practice together. It will seem very disjointed. If you don't practice together, it will seem unnatural. So practice together. Allow time for questions when appropriate. Sometimes you may pause within a group presentation between speakers and take questions. Other times you will do so at the end of the speech. The question and response phase after a presentation is called a forum. So a forum is where you have a formal question and response phase after your speech.